So last year, Dr. Conrad Vine spoke about returning tithe to conferences that are faithful to scripture, so that the conferences that are not faithful to scripture will go broke. So you heard the term go woke, go broke. Do you remember that statement from Conrad Vine when he was preaching in Maine, friends? And because of his sermon, he got banned. The Michigan conference banned him from preaching in the conference. And not only the Michigan conference, there are other conferences and unions that also banned him. So I thought Dr. Conrad Vine was not going to talk about tithe in the SDA church anymore. I thought he was not even going to mention the word tithe in the SDA church. But friends, over the weekend, Conrad Vine did it again. Conrad Vine did it again.
Last message, you indicated, I'll be polite and just say the misdirection or the poor direction our church leaders have taken us, especially the upper conferences like the General Conference, etc. And you also indicated that you return your tithe to the Northern New England Conference. Now, my question is on that line. The Atlantic Union, which is over our conference, to my knowledge, they still have a ban in place that they want to execute even over this meeting because it's an Adventist gathering, and they have forbidden you to speak in gatherings such as this because they want to cover not just union churches, but any Adventist gathering. So the question I have is, every tithe dollar that comes to the New England Conference, 25 cents of that dollar goes to the upper conferences, which is the Atlantic Union and the General and the North American Division, and don't even get me started on that. So how do you not support, that's by default, how do you not support the wrongs of these conferences that are isolated? I mean, you can refuse to support the Potomac Conference or Michigan or whatever, but these upper conferences, they get the money whether you support them or not.
Well, in the real world, you don't always get everything that I want. And from what I've seen as I travel across America, there are many conference presidents practice informal cancel culture. They don't have the courage to take to their constituents the desire to ban me, so they try and do it privately in underhand ways. And some conferences, like Michigan, have actually taken that vote. And one union has voted, that's the Atlantic Union, and the Canadian Union hasn't voted, but they've just informed me. So last week I was in Toronto, and there was pressure put on them to shut down that event in a big ballroom, actually, outside the airport. My view on this is that as I travel around the country, I want to return my tithe to where there are faithful gospel leaders and gospel workers. And I don't, I've always returned my tithe to faithful gospel conferences, Adventist conferences. And I understand that, 25, 30 cents of every dollar will go to people who are directly trying to ban me. The division president called a pastor 2 weeks ago and pressured him to cancel a preaching appointment. The division's involved, the GC's involved, the union's involved. But you don't always get all that you want in the real world. And for me, the good of supporting North New England and your leadership here and the stand you've taken for liberty of conscience outweighs the teeth-grittingly negative of some of that money going to the Atlantic Union. I understand that. But where I can help and help where there is good, I want to support that. And I won't always get all that I want, but that's just the real world in which I live. So that's kind of how I rationalize it. If I were to say, and if we were all to say we will only send tithe to a conference that agrees with everything that we believe, we wouldn't send tithe to anybody. Because if you ask your average church of 100 people what they believe on every doctrine, we have more in disagreement than we have in agreement. And you learn as a pastor, don't press too deeply on some issues. Otherwise, you'll just split the flock right down the middle on some tangential issue. So I think that the stand that Northern England has taken, the courage that your executive committee has shown in the face of huge pressure from the union, the personal sacrifice that these people have made in probably cutting off any future advancement, if you view it in that way, to the union or the division, because this conference has stood for liberty of conscience. I want to respect and honour that, and so therefore I return my tithe here. And if 25% of it goes to the union, I don't get everything I want in life. I learned that when I was in kindergarten, so I'll live with that.
That is it. That is it. Conrad Vine again, mentioning or talking about tithe in the SDA church. And did you hear that he said he returns his tithe to another conference, to a different conference? Like, why? Why is that? Why is that? Because Conrad Vine is in the Michigan conference. So why is he not returning tithe to the Michigan conference? Remember, he said that he returns tithe to faithful conferences that are faithful. So if Conrad Vine is not returning tithe to the Michigan conference, even though he is within the Michigan conference, then Conrad Vine is saying that the Michigan conference is not faithful. It's not faithful to scripture. That is why he is not returning tithe to the conference. And, according to the video I played, he mentioned that the division president pressured a pastor to cancel his preaching appointment.
The division president called a pastor 2 weeks ago and pressured him to cancel a preaching appointment.
Who is that division president? Is he talking about this one, the North American division president, or different division presidents? But do you think Conrad Vine should go ahead and talk about the truth? There are some people. The reason why I'm asking this question is that there are some Adventists that think that Dr. Conrad Vine is divisive. And there are other Adventists that also believe or think that Dr. Conrad Vine is exposing the truth within the SDA church. So he should go ahead. He should go on and expose. So what do you think about Dr. Conrad Vine? Do you think he is divisive with some of his statements or some of his words? Or you believe that he is bold enough to expose the errors within the conferences? Friends, share your thoughts in the comments, all right? So as I said, there are more stories right here that I'm going to actually work on and share with you right here on this channel. So if you have not subscribed to the channel, please press on the subscribe button, because here you get updates concerning events that are taking place both within and outside of the SDA church. Share your thoughts on Conrad Vine's statements that he made just last 2 or 3 days ago about tithe. And let me ask this question before I go, especially those that are in Michigan, all right, Adventists that are in Michigan. Do you still return your tithe to the Michigan conference? Share your answer in the comment. This is all I had to share with you today. As I said, there are more stories coming up, so don't go anywhere. Thanks for watching. See you again. God bless.